Night. Darkness enveloped the skies over Florida. The sound of ocean waves crashing against the shore blended with the wind whistling through the window panes. Inside the vast room, a dim yellow light cast a faint glow on walls adorned with images of the past. On a polished mahogany desk, a half-empty glass of water stood next to a silent mobile phone. No sound disturbed the space, only the steady, contemplative breathing of the man sitting motionless before the window filled the room. He closed his eyes. In the darkness of his mind, a vision appeared, a long corridor stretching into infinity, lined on both sides with closed doors. Cold winds blew along the hallway, carrying distant whispers. The corridor did not feel unfamiliar. It was hauntingly recognizable, as though it belonged to a forgotten fragment of memory. "Come here, choose," a voice echoed, unidentifiable, its origin unknown. Footsteps resonated. The door at the far end of the corridor creaked open. A blinding light poured through, illuminating the entire space. On the other side, a shadowy figure stood waiting. The face was obscured by the radiant glow, but the voice echoed clearly in his mind. The path of light, challenging, yet glorious. The man took a step forward, but suddenly from the opposite direction, another door burst open. Darkness surged out like thick smoke, swallowing all traces of light. Another voice rang out, deeper, softer, yet carrying a strange, irresistible allure. "Absolute power, only one word away." His heart pounded violently. Cold sweat broke across his brow. The darkness gradually consumed the light. Now both doors stood wide open, as if beckoning him. He stood at the crossroads, chest heaving, eyes wide, staring ahead. "Choose," the voice echoed again, this time from both sides. Light and darkness urged him simultaneously. The echoes grew louder, more insistent. Suddenly, the walls of the corridor cracked open. From within the shattered walls, thousands of hands reached out, grasping, pulling, tearing. Each hand bore faces he recognized, the faces of those he had once confronted, those he had overthrown. There was laughter, there were cries, and there were screams, echoing like sharp blades cutting into his mind. "Everything will return if you choose correctly. Just sign. Everything will be yours." He jolted awake. The bedroom remained unchanged. The clock on the desk pointed precisely to midnight. But something felt wrong. On the desk lay a black envelope. It hadn't been there before he went to sleep. The cover was smooth without any markings. Only a single line of silver lettering shimmered under the lamp's glow. "Come to Trump Tower at midnight. The moment of decision has arrived." His trembling hand reached for the envelope. His heart pounded in his chest. The inside was completely empty. No letter, no explanation. Only that single sheet of jet black paper with the ominous words. The wind outside the window grew stronger. Thunder rumbled in the distance. His instincts screamed. This message could not be ignored. He rose slowly, draping a long coat over his shoulders. With one last glance at the black envelope, he stepped forward. His shadow stretched long across the gleaming floor, each footstep echoing through the silent room. Trump Tower. In the heart of the brightly lit city, the tower rose high, standing proud, a monument to power and dominance. Yet tonight, there was something ominous about it. The glass windows reflected the city lights, but at the top of the tower, a strange shadow loomed. The lobby was eerily silent. There were no security guards, not a soul in sight. His hand brushed lightly against the glass door. Ice cold. The elevator doors slid open without him pressing a button. Inside, the mirrored walls reflected a man with a tense, unreadable face. The elevator lights flickered. The numbers lit up in sequence, yet the elevator didn't stop at any floor. It continued its ascent, straight to the topmost level. Click. The elevator doors slid open. A vast room lay before him, a space that had once hosted the most powerful meetings. Now it was cloaked in darkness. In the center of the room, a small sphere of light appeared. Within that radiant glow, a figure stood. The figure slowly emerged from the brilliance, a pair of enormous white wings. Light radiated from the wings, flooding the entire room with a blinding brilliance. The figure was dressed in pure white robes, a face illuminated yet stern. Without any wasted words, a voice rang out, authoritative, resonant, undeniable. I am Uriel. Silence fell over the room. The air grew heavier, almost suffocating. Uriel stepped forward, and the light from his wings pushed the surrounding darkness away. You have been summoned here because the time has come. There will be two paths. One path you know well, power, glory, yet fleeting. The other, sacrifice, but eternal. Silence. The words dropped into the space like a hammer striking an anvil. No one answered. Uriel raised a hand. To the left, a radiant door of shimmering light materialized. To the right, a door as black as the void appeared, absorbing the light around it. From the dark door, a soft laugh echoed, smooth, deep, carrying with it the promise of limitless power. Ah, just in time. The voice from the shadows grew clearer. A figure stepped forward, eyes glowing crimson like embers. No introduction was needed. He was Belial. Uriel did not glance at him. The archangel spoke a single, unwavering sentence. You must choose. Uriel stood tall, his wings blazing with a warm yet commanding glow. His face remained expressionless. His eyes shimmered with the cold glint of truth and wisdom. Belial emerged fully from the darkness. With each step he took, the marble floor beneath seemed to tremble ever so slightly. His fiery red eyes gleamed with danger and temptation alike. He wore black robes lined with red streaks, like trails of fresh blood. His sharp, angular face bore a sly, half-smile. When he finally spoke, his voice echoed throughout the room, soft, seductive, like a whisper in the mind. Well, well. Uriel, it's you again, isn't it? Always you. Always arriving just in time to persuade them to choose the harder path. Uriel did not turn. His voice rang out, calm, steady, yet unyielding. Because it is the only path that leads to eternal glory. Belial laughed, a deep, resonant laugh that reverberated off the glass walls of Trump Tower. Eternal glory? The same hollow promises you always offer. Can't you see? All mankind desires is power, fame, and immortality. And I can give them that. No waiting, no sacrifice. The air grew tense. The clash between light and darkness loomed inevitable. Belial's smile widened, his eyes gleaming with certainty. All they want is power. All they crave is victory. And I am the embodiment of both. Uriel, his wings casting a steady glow, stepped forward once more. The space seemed to hold its breath. The choice, between fleeting dominance and enduring virtue, was now. Belial turned and fixed his gaze on the man standing in the center of the room. You. Look around you. You once stood at the pinnacle. You held the fate of millions in your hands. But now what remains? Criticism? Betrayal? Do you not long for it all to return? All the glory, all the power, and more. Far more. Just one word. Only one word. Uriel raised his hand. A brilliant golden light appeared, hovering in the air. Within that radiant glow, images flickered. Wars raging, cries of agony, and a world plunged into chaos. His voice rang out, stronger, deeper, impossible to ignore. If you choose the darkness, the world will drown in chaos. Wars will never end. But if you choose the light, you will become a symbol of rebirth. The choice is yours. The air grew heavy. Time seemed to freeze. The man stood silent, unmoving. His eyes flickered from the images of devastation within the light, then shifted toward Belial's radiant yet dangerously alluring face. Belial stepped closer, lowering his voice to a whisper that echoed with seductive promise. You know what awaits you if you follow him? Oblivion, weakness. But with me, you will have everything. No one will stand against you. You will live forever in the annals of history. An empire will bear your name for all eternity. All you need do is sign. With a flourish, Belial produced an ancient scroll. On its surface, crimson symbols glowed, like fresh blood still wet on parchment. A black feather quill materialized in the air, hovering effortlessly before the man. Just sign. Everything will be yours. Uriel stepped forward. His voice now carried the weight of eternity, stern, unwavering. Do not listen to him. The power he promises is a trap. All of it, an illusion. You will no longer be yourself if you sign that covenant. Belial sneered, his voice dripping with contempt and confidence. You speak as though you understand humanity. They do not care for the soul. They care only for power and victory. The room began to tremble. The clash of light and darkness surged in the air, an invisible battle pulling at the very fabric of existence. The man trembled, his hand clenched into a fist. The sound of his own heartbeat thundered in his ears. The black feather quill hovered before him, glistening under the dim light. Belial leaned in, his voice now a mere whisper, soft as a breath. Just sign. Uriel shouted, the light from his wings blinding and fierce. Don't do it! The space seemed to shatter. Images flooded the man's mind. Glorious victories, crowds roaring his name, then darkness devouring it all. Screams echoed. Gunfire erupted. Blood and tears stained the vision. And finally, nothing. A vast, black void. Wake up, Uriel's voice echoed. A faint glimmer of light pierced the darkness. The man gasped for air, his eyes snapping wide open. Choose! Both voices, Uriel's and Belial's, rang out at the same time. The black-feathered quill still hovered before him. The scroll radiated a deep, blood-red glow. His hand reached out. The air thickened, suffocating. Each second stretched endlessly. Belial smiled, his crimson eyes gleaming with the confidence of victory. But then, the man let the quill fall. It struck the marble floor with a sharp, echoing clack. Uriel smiled faintly. Belial roared in fury. The darkness surrounding him twisted into a violent storm. You've made your choice, but are you sure? You won't regret it. Belial's voice echoed ominously as his form began to dissolve into shadows. The darkness receded, pulling all sound with it. Silence returned. Uriel gazed at the man with gentler eyes. A wise choice, but the true trial has only just begun. With a wave of his hand, Uriel summoned a portal of radiant light. Step through. Your destiny awaits. Without a word, the man stepped forward. The portal closed behind him. The darkness vanished. Outside, dawn broke slowly over the city. Trump Tower returned to its usual quiet grandeur, as though nothing had ever happened. The world faded to white. No sound, no breath. Only endless, silent space. His footsteps echoed through the void. Each step stretched into eternity. From the distance, shadows began to creep in, swirling like smoke. And then, a voice, deep, smooth, seductive. Welcome. I've been waiting a long time for you. A figure emerged from the mist. Belial. The same crimson eyes glowing like embers. The same cold yet undeniably charismatic smile. He stepped forward. Each step seemed to make the space itself tremble. Did you know everyone comes here eventually? The strong, the weak, the great, the forgotten. They all stand before me, faced with a choice, and very few turn me down. He stopped. His burning gaze pierced deep into the man's soul. But you are different. You were born to rule? Belial raised his hand. The empty space around them shifted. Skyscrapers erupted from the nothingness. Crowds appeared, thousands chanting his name. Banners waved, flags fluttered. The roar of adoration thundered in the air. Look, this is what you once had. Glory, power, fame, and you let it all slip away. Belial stepped even closer, lowering his voice to a tempting whisper. But I can give it back to you. So much more. An empire greater than any the world has ever known. An empire that will carry your name forever. With a casual flick of his hand, the scene transformed. Before them stood a throne, massive, forged entirely from pure gold. Beneath it, millions knelt, heads bowed in unwavering loyalty. All you need to do is sign. A scroll appeared again, but this time, it wasn't just a contract. The parchment glowed with blood-red symbols, ancient, pulsing with life. Dark, unrecognizable symbols surrounded the text, shifting like shadows. The black feather quill reappeared, hovering silently in the air. Belial laughed, a deep, resonant sound that filled the void. One stroke of ink, one flick of your wrist, and everything will be yours. The man stood still, his breath heavy and uncertain, his eyes locked onto the scroll. Part of him craved a sign to claim the power, but another part hesitated. Silence. What are you thinking? Belial's voice broke the quiet, soft, gentle, dripping with temptation. Are you afraid? No need to fear. The strong never fear. Belial stepped closer, his voice lowering into a conspiratorial whisper. You once stood at the pinnacle. I'm merely offering to restore you to your rightful place. He leaned in, as though revealing a secret meant only for the man. Don't you see? They betrayed you, all of them. Those who once cheered your name have turned their backs. But I will help you. I will give you power. Power to crush them all. His voice, sweet as honey, dripped with deadly poison. You deserve it. You were born to be a king. Suddenly, a radiant beam of golden light pierced through the darkness. Uriel appeared. The angel's face bore no emotion, but his eyes glistened with stern resolve. Belial, you've said enough. Uriel turned to the man, his voice ringing out like a great bell. You do not have to listen to him. He brings only destruction and pain. Every promise he makes, lies. Belial burst out laughing. His laughter thundered through the space like rolling storms. Lies. I speak only the truths they long to hear. Power, glory, victory. Those are the truths of this world. He turned again to the man, his crimson eyes glinting dangerously. Tell me, do you want to return to insignificance? Or do you want it all, with just a single signature? Uriel stepped forward, his voice soft yet filled with weight. I know what you're thinking. You've endured so much. But the easy path is not always the right one. Uriel lifted his hand. A vision appeared before them. A peaceful world. Families laughing together. Children's joyful voices echoed. No war. No pain. You can have all this. No blood. No tears. But you must trust. Trust in the light. Belial sneered. The light? Ha! Empty promises. Only power brings order. And I am power. The tension thickened. The black feathered quill hovered before the man. He reached for it, then pulled his hand back. Sweat trickled down his brow. His gaze shifted between Uriel and Belial. Do I have to choose? His voice was hoarse. Yes, Belial whispered. But deep down, you already know the right choice. Your choice, Uriel said gently, will decide everything. Time seemed to freeze. The room fell into a deadly silence. Everyone, waiting. The man clenched his fist. His heartbeat roared in his ears. Breath, ragged. The quill glimmered, suspended in the dim light. Belial smiled. Uriel remained calm. And then, the man's hand reached out. A deafening clap of thunder. The sky outside tore apart. A decision had been made. As the man's hand touched the quill, the room shook violently. The blackened night sky split open, white lightning tearing across the heavens. Thunder roared like drums of war. Belial laughed, a deep, victorious sound echoing like the screams of 1,000 souls. At last, you have chosen! The quill blazed, glowing crimson. A blood-red light spread across the room. On the ancient scroll, the glowing symbols began to move, alive, writhing. Each symbol vibrated, releasing shrill screams. The room trembled. The glass walls cracked. A vortex of swirling wind rose around them. Uriel spread his wings wide. Blinding golden light burst forth, pushing back part of the encroaching darkness. His voice rang out, strong, unyielding, like thunder splitting the sky. It's not over yet, Belial snarled, his crimson eyes blazing. From the floor, darkness surged upward, like waves crashing against the light. Hundreds of shadowy figures appeared, twisted, grotesque. Empty eyes, mouths wide open in silent screams. They hurled themselves at Uriel in a frenzy, Uriel swung his arm. Light from his wings swept the room, incinerating dozens of the shadows. But they multiplied. For everyone destroyed, two more emerged. The room became a battlefield. Clashing steel rang out. Screams reverberated. "You cannot stop this now, Uriel!" Belial charged. His hand morphed into a blade, sharp, black, wreathed in dark flames. Uriel met the strike with a sword of pure light summoned from the void. When they collided, light and darkness exploded outward. A shockwave shattered everything nearby. In the center of the chaos, the man stood, eyes wide. The vortex howled around him, tugging at his clothes and hair. Two voices echoed in his mind. "Just sign. It will all end. Power, glory, everything you ever wanted. Fight back. This is not your path. Do not let the darkness claim your soul." His grip tightened on the quill. The black ink had begun to spread across the scroll. It crept slowly, forming the final symbols. But his eyes wavered. In a fleeting vision, a world consumed by chaos, cities reduced to ashes, oceans of fire, cries of despair echoing endlessly. "No, not like this." Belial's roar dragged him back to reality. The demon drove Uriel into a corner. The black flame blade pressed dangerously close to the angel's neck. "Accept it, Uriel. Your light is far too weak to stand against me." Uriel gritted his teeth, his eyes flashing with defiance. "You underestimate the power of faith." At that moment, Uriel blazed with radiant brilliance. A dazzling surge of golden light burst forth, sweeping away the encroaching darkness. Belial screamed, thrown back by the force. The room trembled again. From above, a colossal beam of light descended, tearing through the roof and reaching straight into the heavens. The pitch-black sky split apart. Sunlight pierced through the thick clouds. "No!" Belial bellowed. With a final furious cry, he lunged at the man. The black flame blade raised high, but Uriel stepped between them, wings spread wide. "You shall not pass beyond this point." Belial roared in rage. Darkness surged outward, crashing toward them. Uriel swung his sword of light. Light and darkness collided. The impact triggered a massive explosion. Trump Tower shook violently, its walls trembling under the sheer force of the clash. The man looked up. The black feathered quill slipped from his fingers. It fell to the marble floor with a soft clack. The scroll burst into flames. Azure fire devoured the ancient symbols, burning them to nothingness. Belial shrieked. His form flickered, beginning to unravel. "No! You cannot refuse me!" The surrounding darkness recoiled, pulling him back. Slowly, Belial was dragged into the void. Uriel lowered his sword. The glow of his wings softened. He turned to the man, his voice warm yet solemn. "You have made the right choice, but the trial has only just begun." Outside, the sky cleared. Dawn's first light crept across the horizon. The man stepped onto the balcony of Trump Tower. The crisp morning breeze brushed past him. New York City bustled as always, its streets alive with movement. But he knew everything had changed. Uriel appeared beside him, wings still glowing with gentle brilliance. "You refused hollow power to protect your soul, but the darkness will return. Be ready." Behind the angel, a portal of light opened. Uriel paused before stepping through, glancing back with a faint smile. "We shall meet again." With that, Uriel vanished. The portal closed behind him. The man stood in silence. His eyes gazed far into the horizon. In his mind, Belial's final words echoed, "Do you think you've won? The game has only just begun. I will return." He clenched his fist. Resolve burned in his eyes. The dawn sunlight bathed the city below. A new day had begun, but somewhere, in the distant shadows, crimson eyes still watched. The battle was over, but the war had only begun. The soft morning light blanketed the city. A new day had begun, but in the distant shadows, a pair of crimson eyes still watched. The battle was not over. Dawn had broken. The golden glow of the rising sun stretched across New York City. From the highest balcony of Trump Tower, the man stood silently, his gaze fixed on the horizon. His breath was calm and steady. Everything seemed normal, yet he knew that something within him had changed. Behind him, the air shimmered faintly. A soft glow began to take shape. Uriel appeared once more, his wings radiating a gentle light. This time, the angel's face no longer bore the stern expression of judgment. Instead, it held a deep understanding. "The first battle is over," Uriel said, his voice resonating like the whisper of dawn's breeze. "But the true trial is only just beginning." The man did not turn. His voice was low, laced with reflection. "I refuse the power he offered. Yet I still feel it isn't over." Uriel stepped beside him, his gaze following the line of the horizon. "Because every choice comes with a price." Suddenly, a strong gust of wind swept through the balcony. Dark clouds began to gather in the distance, creeping slowly across the sky. Once again, the shadows stirred, thin, almost imperceptible, but undeniably present. Uriel's eyes sharpened as he looked toward the looming darkness. Belial has not been vanquished. The darkness was merely pushed back. It never truly disappears. The man clenched his fist. His heartbeat slowed, but its weight pressed heavily against his chest. "Then what must I do?" Uriel turned to face him. His voice rang out, strong, unwavering. "Prepare yourself, for next time he will return, stronger than before. And you, once again, you will stand at the boundary between light and darkness." 1 month later, the halls of Trump Tower lay silent in the early morning. The man walked along a long corridor. His steps were slow, heavy, yet steady. Each glass panel he passed reflected a man who had once held ultimate power, but now it reflected a soul wandering the path of redemption. He stopped before a sealed room. On the table lay piles of handwritten letters, reports, and invitations from the most powerful figures. But none of these caught his attention. Only one thing drew his gaze: a single pitch-black envelope. It had appeared once again. Under the dim light, the familiar silver lettering glistened. "The final choice is approaching." Night. Trump Tower glowed faintly under the city lights. In the vast room, the man sat alone. He held the black envelope in his hands, his eyes fixed intently on the inscription. Each letter seemed to whisper directly into his mind. Suddenly, a voice rose from the shadows. "You know what awaits, Belial." He had returned, but this time there was no urgency, no rage. His voice was calm, deeper, steadier, sharp as the blade of a cold knife. "Did you think refusing me once was enough? You were wrong. You and I, we are bound together. Power is your nature. You can deny it, but it remains within you." The man looked up, his eyes steady, unflinching. "I chose the light." Belial smiled, a cold, knowing smile. "The light? Or are you simply afraid of the price that comes with it? If the light were truly as strong as you believe, why am I still here?" The shadows around him twisted and swirled. They coalesced into visions of a broken world. Cities ablaze, skies choked with smoke. Cries of anguish echoed endlessly. "Look, this is the future you have chosen. If you fail to act, you have the power to change it all. All it takes is a nod." Uriel appeared once more. This time the light surrounding him was not brilliant and blinding, but soft, steady, unwavering. "Do not listen to him," Uriel said. "He shows you only your fears, but it is sacrifice that forges eternity." Belial scoffed, his eyes narrowing with disdain. "Sacrifice? Empty words. Only power brings order. And I am power." The room fell silent. The weight of the moment hung heavy. The choice, once again, was his to make. Sacrifice? How many more sacrifices must be made? Do you truly believe humanity will be grateful? They will forget you. But if you choose me, your name will echo through eternity. The room trembled. Uriel and Belial fell silent, their gazes fixed on the man. The final moment. The man stepped onto the balcony, bathed in the bright glow of the moonlight. Beneath his feet, the city lay unaware that its fate hung on a single choice. Uriel stood to his left, Belial to his right. Before him, on a stone table, lay a scroll. No light, no darkness, just a blank sheet of paper. Belial whispered, his voice soft and seductive. "Just one signature, and you will be the greatest king the world has ever known." Uriel's voice followed, gentle, steady, and resolute. Do not sign, and you will bring hope to the world. The man extended his hand. Silence. A soft breeze stirred the air. The city lights continued to flicker in the distance. No one knew that a soul had just endured its greatest battle. A battle with itself. The man grasped the scroll, and he tore it apart. Shreds of white paper caught the wind, glistening beneath the moonlight. Belial screamed. The shadows recoiled, sucked back into the void. He vanished, leaving no trace behind. Uriel smiled. For the first time, a truly warm smile. You have won. The next morning, the man stood once more on the balcony, watching the sunrise. His face was calm. No more inner turmoil, no more shadows. He knew now. He needed neither power nor fame. The greatest victory was the victory over himself. The sky was clear. The city awakened, busy as ever. But on the highest floor of Trump Tower, a man had been reborn. The journey had ended. Or perhaps it had only just begun.